Welcome to my budget deck channel, where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this sounds like something you'd be into, then why don't you leave me a little subscribe? First of all, I want to talk about the Adamancipator deck because of the ban list. The ban list has hit this deck, especially the more budget-friendly version, quite a bit, I'd say, because the consistency is a bit down since you lost one of your tuner monsters, which in the grand scheme of things, I think the very competitive version will not care as much about, but this version will, because you will be less likely to actually go into your level 8 synchros, which is very annoying, but we'll try to circumvent this and try to still make things happen in this variant. So let me start off. I will first of all talk about the cards that I chose to run and constantly refer to other cards that you could be running instead if you want to, or if you want to spend a bit more money on it, would like to run instead. First of all, I decided to go for the Magnet Warrior package again. I think it's quite a neat package because it's quite cheap, since you don't need to craft Unexpected Die, because you already should have it from, I think, the tutorial it is. Also, it still incorporates Earth Monsters, so if you want to run Blockdragon, which I still did not include in this deck, hear me out though, because I do not give in to Konami. I filled this deck up from my original deck profile with the exact same amounts of normal and rare cards as before. I'm not being pushed into running more super rares in this variant especially, so nope, definitely not going to do this. But if you want a more competitive version of the deck, Blockdragon is the way to go. And since this deck tries to mainly turbo out Gallant Granite, if you can't find your tutor monsters to search either one of them, you could get away with at least running just one Blockdragon, because it is searchable by Gallant Granite. So if you would want to be running it, then add one could be like a wee trial thing for you to see if you like it or if you don't like it. But the deck would need some changes that I will be covering in a second. I still run the Prankets engine, which it's not as good as it used to be, but now you can still do the same kind of stuff. You just had to fill the deck with one more rock monster. It's still Earth monster, so it still would work with stuff like Blockdragon. If you want to go for a more Prankets orientated version, you could add one more, either Fansies or Lampsies if you like, and then go for things like the Link 4. Then you'd need to add one Rocket Ride as well, so you have like spell trap card removal if your opponent is into that, which loads of them will be, especially in best of one formats. Other than that, right now you can go into the combo with Weather Washer and Bow Bark, so you have a board that is very hard for your opponent to crack. That being said, it does nothing, but it stalls, and the next turn you could go into stuff like Raster Liger, which can be nice, or if any Link 4 that you have that is a lot better than this one, you could also do this then. That's why I like to run the Prankets Pandemonium as well. I have the fusion, so you can do this as some sort of play, getting used to the whole what you can do with the deck combo wise. You don't have to run it, you could cut this out if you want, if you just like to run it to Link climb a little bit and to get some rock monsters out, get an advantage over your opponent, then this is fine. But I felt like running one Garnet in the deck is okay for the potential that you get with this small little package, but I can understand if you'd rather run another Miracle Rupture or whatnots in this deck, or even a Hand Traps if you like to make this deck a bit different. Adamancipator Seeker obviously at 3, same sadly for Researcher. I know it's a super rare, but this card is very crucial to the deck, and since this one didn't get hit, you definitely run it at 3 still. I decided to run one Ash Blossom because you have it in, like, you will have the card with the whole cheap master packs, so most people should have one. If you don't, then maybe save up 750 gems to buy that pack, because it gives you advantage, and it also stops stuff like Max C, because this card kind of screws over the whole Adamancipator deck, because all you do is basically summon monsters, so you do not want to be running into Max C. So one Ash Blossom is definitely needed, and most likely you would be wanting to run a 3 in this specific deck as well. One Gigantes technically deals with your opponent's spell and trap cards. Sadly, you can't really summon this card off of an Adamancipator, so it doesn't really count towards your rock monster, which is, I don't know, but since we be running Adamancipator Friends, this card actually can come in handy, especially going second, because you could search it. It's another extender, I want to say, gets your place a bit going after you've done stuff, because obviously if you don't have an Earth monster in your graveyard, you can't do much with this one. Revival Golem is a neat card that you can send off of Miracle Rupture, so I'd be running this. Same for Tackle Crusader. You could bump up Miracle Rupture to 2 or 3. You could even replace it with Adamancipator Friends for it, but I felt like at 1 it was fine. You could run it instead of ZS Armed Sage as well if you like to. In the end, it's going to be the same thing. If you draw this card and Miracle Rupture, then you have a bit of a problem. If you draw 2 Miracle Ruptures, you have a bit of a problem. So I like to keep it more open in a sense of you don't really want to have cards in your hand that you can't activate. So I like it like this, even though it looks a bit weird, but you can do whatever you feel like works for you. Tackle Crusader isn't an amazing card, but it's a rock monster, it's earth, does its job in this deck, I'd say. So run it at 1. Prankets Roxy's already talked about this. Analyzer, still a great card. Sadly, we are lacking one of her. To the Adamancipator Stones. This card is probably the worst of them. I run it at 1 because it's a fire monster, even though the whole Prankets engine does get you a fire monster into the graveyard, and usually you won't end on your fire synchro, but this card can be nice because it can recycle your Adamancipator Friends, it can recycle Relief, it can recycle Resonance, which sounds stupid, but sometimes, very rarely, this comes up. If you want to replace these, then you run definitely triple Quackamayo Guardian. You could go for stuff like Overload or mainly Sandman or Wall if you like to, but Guardian helps you especially against hand traps, so this card is pretty great. Could play 1 Supplier as well for some extending if you'd like. Same goes for Doki Doki, very good extender, especially now if you run a more Earth variant than before. It can search you out Analyzer as well from your deck and special summon it, which is quite neat, but would be another 2 or 3 or 1 super rare depending on what ratio you want to run it as. But for this version, then the more Earth monster stuff you need, the less of the Wee Stones you obviously want to play. The green one actually helps you in this variant though, because it can recycle your extra deck monsters, which can be somewhat crucial. Also, it gets you a rock monster on top so you don't whiff, which becomes even more crucial now that you can't do that much as maybe certain high ceiling decks could do. I like the blue one because it gives you an extra draw, but obviously you could also cut down these ones. I like Rock Band Xeno Guitar, even though you do not run Blockdragon. With Blockdragon, this card is even a tiny bit better, but with stuff like Gigantes, which can come up in combination with Xeno Guitar if it's in the graveyard, if it's sent to the graveyard by Miracle Rupture, you can do certain things with it. So I felt like at least running it at 1 was neat. One that is Armed Sage, and that is for the fact of you want to be turboing out your Gallant Granite all of the time, and since this card doesn't require you to run rock monsters, it is pretty neat. You obviously want to make sure you don't activate Friends before you use cards like Armed Sage, because obviously this card locks you into rock monsters, so it's not just the extra deck, it's all monsters, so you have a bit of a problem there. But usually you want to use this card quite early on, and the reason is because if you control 1 level 4 monster that is not this card, then you can special summon it from your hand, which helps you go into Gallant Granite. But like I said, can swap it out with Miracle Rupture. It's mainly just a way to get your board a bit filled with level 4 monsters. Double Gadarla, Kaijus are quite neat because this deck doesn't do all that much going second, plus you have no hand traps basically besides Ash Blossom, so if you go second, this at least gives you a slither of a chance that you might be able to do stuff. Usually not. You could cut these Kaijus to play different kind of cards as well if you like. Monster Reborn, a very good extender. Adamancipator Science does kind of the same thing in this deck, but Reborn can actually get you some of your opponent's monsters, which sounds stupid but can come in handy from time to time. Friends for searching your tuners, which is in my opinion now more important than ever, and since you don't go into crazy X-Rec shenanigans because it's not very budget, I feel like that unlocks you into rocks isn't as bad in this version of the deck than it would be in a good version actually. Miracle Rupture also somewhat of an extender and gets you certain cards to the graveyard if you need them. Prankets Pandemonium is already talked about it. Prankets Fusion can be nice to stall out a little bit, but you don't have to run it. With the whole Miracle Rupture thing, very quick, you could run a Fossil Fusion variant of this deck, because this card could summon you out at level 4 Earth Rock Monster. So this is another extender that you could use to do all sorts of stuff with. And then you can like draw stuff if you have your Fossil Fusion in the graveyard with Miracle Rupture, for example, and so on and so on. There's quite a few things you could actually do with including this card. Fossil Fusion itself would be an extender in this card. It's not really a play starter because you do need stuff in your graveyard, but it actually would work in the deck. So if you are into the whole fossil kind of deck, I would improve your go in second strategy a little bit, and let's be honest, it would be a bit fun. Talking about fun, these trap cards are mainly that, not really the most competitive thing you could be playing in this deck. If you want better cards, Book of Moon, or especially Forbidden Chalice as a budget option would be the way to go forward. Usually you probably fill it with hand traps instead. This card would also be good for going second, which the trap cards are not. The trap cards have one thing that is neat about them, which your level 6 fire monster can actually search them, so it adds a certain another level to your excavations. If it doesn't have to be a rock monster, it can be those. And sometimes if your opponent disrupts your plays quite early on, then you could just tribute an Adamancipator monster to destroy 2 of their cards, which can be quite nice. This card is the monster negates that you usually don't have. If you run a Quackmyro Guardian, then this becomes less of an issue. You might as well just cut them and put stuff like Solemn Judgment in that you have probably, because if you have Ash Blossom, then you probably bought the packs with Solemn Judgment as well. For the extra deck, one of each of the Adamancipators. You could technically play 2 Risen, but it isn't really as necessary now, especially since Analyzers are 2. Could go for a double Raptide. That came up the most, where I was lacking 1 Raptide in the extra deck. So if you have a second one because you opened the packs, definitely play it. I don't think it does much of a harm to your deck. The Prank Kids engine with Meow Meow and the Weather Washer, quite neat from time to time, and you can send stuff to the graveyard. If you extend your plays, you can easily go into Bow Bark and Doodle Do in the same turn, and then you have both you have both fire and wind in your graveyard, which can be quite nice, and you have water in your graveyard because of Dropsies, so all the elements are combined, so this works very well. Talk about elements, you could run Halqifibrax in combination with Quandax and go into Satellite Warrior during your opponent's turn. If you don't want crazy Halqifibrax combos, but just small ones, then popping cards during your opponent's turn with Satellite Warrior after you've used the effect of one of your level 6 synchros already can be quite niche and quite funny as well from time to time. Another card you could be playing is Nibiru, even if you play it at 1, because Gallant Granite can actually search it. Yes, it would telegraph it a bit to your opponent, but does that really matter? They still have to play around it somehow, so it sometimes doesn't matter if they know it or not, but you will already have used your turn during stuff, and then you have to deal with a Nibiru token as well, which this variant would not be as equipped to do as some other ones would be, because your recursion play is not overly great. It's not terrible, but sometimes if you set up your board going first, then the next turn after will not be as amazing as it could be. This is my version of the Adamancipators post the ban list. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all these things other YouTubers tell you, but most importantly, have a good day.